Hello zusammen, welcome to another edition of Feedback Freitag. This is a bit of an extended one because we had the reading break and didn't make sense to do a module or a tour in between there. So hopefully you use that week off, so to speak, to your advantage. Again, the next Freitag controller will be due on Sunday, so we're getting back up to speed after that. Nonetheless, Sarah and I are caught up in our grading and we've looked at things, so there's still some feedback that we'd like to share back with you. And a couple things in particular for German 101 then. The first, there was a bit of an emphasis on telling time this past tour. So when we think about telling time in German, a couple things to take note of. So first, just like in English, we can shorten the way that we express time by using conventions like, a quarter past 3 or it's half past 2. So these are like a quarter and a half. We can do the same thing in German. Just a couple things to watch out for. So to use a quarter in German, we use the word Viertel, and then we use either Viertel with either vor, so before, or Viertel nach, so afterwards. So we could say something like es ist Viertel vor 6, so it's quarter before 6, right? And it kind of makes sense. We're just saying the exact same thing we want to say, just Viertel replaces quarter, and then we still would say 6 for 6, for example. It gets a little bit more complicated when we want to say, well, it's half past 6 then, right? Because we wouldn't say es ist halb 6, because whenever we use the halb, the half in German, we're kind of like basically taking half off of a number. So we always use the number ahead of what we want to say, and that's where it gets a bit confusing. So instead of saying es ist halb 6, to say it's half past 6, we'd have to say es ist halb 7. It's half of 7, so it's 6:30 basically, halb 7. So it's just primarily keeping that in mind when we're talking about time and using either halb or Viertel. The other thing to watch out for then is when we set up trying to say, well, when does something happen, right? And there we use two prepositions. We're either using or am. And we use when we're talking about the exact hour at which something occurs. So for example, halb 2 kommt er. At 1:30 he's coming, okay? But we use the preposition am then when we're talking about a time of day something occurs. So for example, am Nachmittag essen wir, at lunch we eat, right? So when we're using something like morgen, Abend, Nachmittag, those kind of expressions, we're going to use am, and then we're going to use for the actual, like the time itself, the actual number of time, the hour. So that's kind of what to pay attention for in terms of time. The other thing to mention is just separable prefix verbs. We encountered our first one in the past tongue controller with the verb aufwachen, so to wake up, right? And separable prefix verbs, you recognize them because they have that prefix at the beginning, and the prefix is a preposition. So it's going to take a bit of time to get used to these things, but you're going to start to recognize when a verb has that common preposition at the beginning. It's often a separable prefix verb, not always, but often. So look for that separable prefix, and then what we do is we remove it from the verb itself. And then we take that preposition and put it at the very end of the sentence, and it will always go to the very end of the sentence. So your sentence starts off normally subject verb, but then you have whatever else is in the sentence, and then the separable prefix returns at the very end, separated from the verb. So again, a verb like aufwachen, when conjugated, would be, for example, ich wache 8 Uhr auf, right? So ich wache, we have the wachen from aufwachen, we conjugate that, and then the separable prefix part, the auf, goes to the end of the sentence. So that's kind of how that works. And again, there's going to be many examples of separable prefix verbs that we encounter, but once you get used to the convention of them, that we remove the prefix, put it in the sentence, it becomes just kind of part of what you do, right? So those are kind of the main things I wanted to share this week. One other thing to mention is that there's this whole participation grade in the course. It hasn't really come up yet because it's something that we kind of watch over time, but just we want to let you know and just remind you that everything that you do in the course that isn't graded, but that we can observe, so like Polizeikontrollen that are not graded, the Anreisen that are not graded, and just your activities on the discussion boards that are part of your tours that again are not graded. All those different components are part of your participation grade. So at the start of, not next week, but the week afterwards, Sarah and I are going to look through what you've done so far and give you your participation grade for the first half of the term. So this is basically an invitation right now to, if you are not caught up to speed, spend the next week, get caught up to speed, do the activities, do whatever you need to do, because we're going to give you that grade for the first half of the term basically, and then that's kind of just putting a stop to that. And then the next part of your participation grade will be for the second half of the term. So whatever you have to do for the first half by, again, the beginning of the next week, do so by then, okay? Other than that, again, hopefully you've enjoyed your break, and we're looking forward to seeing your Polizeikontrolle by Sunday, okay? Tschüss!